Right. Well, welcome to the Food Hub session, the importance of food hubs in Alaska and beyond. And Sassy, can you click into on the screen so my clicker works? Woo, okay. So we're going to do a real brief, just a couple minutes of background on food hubs in Alaska and the landscape with me, Sundance Visser, not Megan and Megan. And then we'll get some Alaskan and Hawaiian and other examples of food hubs and wrap it up with Ken Meter. And we're going to run pretty quickly through each example so that we have time for discussion at the end. So here we go. There's a lot of words on this slide because we've been doing a lot of work with food hubs for the past few years. I'll let you all read most of it, but started back in 2015 with a Wallace Center workshop that was well attended in Anchorage, and then we've had USDA local food promotion programs and other federal funding fund at least 4 food hubs throughout the state. The pandemic changed the landscape quite a bit, with food hubs being a low contact food distribution model and increased sales a lot. The past couple of years, we just about a year ago, we wrapped up our AFPC's local food promotion program grant that was established this food hubs network in Alaska. We met monthly in a working group with 6 existing food hubs and 3 emerging food hubs. We had all kinds of different guests and problem solving, celebrating together. We all had a really great food hub showcase at the last conference in 2023. And just overall Alaskan themes of needing more production and infrastructure, institutional purchasing, and sustainable funding sources. Over the past year, we published a report, How Alaska Food Hubs Network Can Best Move Forward. That's on our website. You'll hear from Ken Meter later in this session. There's an operations guide on our website. The Food Hubs working group continued to meet monthly. We did have 2 food hubs in Alaska Sunset, Catch 49 and the Alaska Food Hub, and are just dealing with an overall environment of funding uncertainty. In Alaska, as you'll see, no food hubs look alike. They don't necessarily meet the standard USDA definition. So yeah, I will show you our speakers here. We've got 3 of them joining us on Zoom, but we'll start with Kaylee and your colleague from Taiyona. So I'm going to pass you this mic.
Thank you. Well, I'll just dive in a little bit to explain the Taiyona Gather Food Hub. Some of you will be familiar with some of this content if you were in the LFPA panel earlier today. But the Taiyona Gather Food Hub is an expansion of our Taiyona Grown program. Taiyona Grown was a program founded in 2012 as an initiative to build out community agriculture and food security initiatives in the native village of Taionik. And that started with the clearing of a 1-acre farm that expanded into hydroponics, canning and food preservation workshops, lots of youth education, hiring youth, on-farm research, technical assistance. So it's really grown into a huge umbrella of things under the Taiyona Grown name. And now that we've expanded into this project, kind of looking beyond what we're growing in Taionik, but gathering products from other Alaskan regions, this was kind of the next phase of that growth after having built out a really strong local food production system. So this really was enabled through the LFPA program. Through this program, we have served every household in Taionik. We have purchased from more than 30 producers around the state. You can see from the picture here that logistics, if you were just in the last discussion talking about food value chains, is very challenging, and we don't always have great conditions. this looks like kind of a charming Alaska photo, but those carrots really are very cold in the dead of winter, and a lot of our produce, a lot of our foods, milk, meats, sit outside while they're waiting for a plane to catch a weather window to fly over. So even being so close to Anchorage, we really benefit that they can rebound sometimes from logistical delays, because these flights are just going 20, 25 minutes over to Tyonek. But much more challenging logistics when you start to work in even further remote areas. So one thing that also made this program possible, if some of you know, the LFPA was just, or an LFPA Plus, which was the program that we were under, did not allow for any personnel funding. So in order to make this happen, we also pursued an LFPP grant to supplement this project. That allowed us to hire Tanya Kaloa, who's our food distribution coordinator on the Tyonek side. So TTCD works on the Anchorage side to aggregate foods. We manage an online inventory through the local food marketplace, and we send food over to Tanya weekly, and she aggregates and get those sent out to households. I know I have one more slide here, so I'll just point this out real quick. I mentioned this a little bit in our last discussion about LFPA, but I just want to explain for some of our impetus of this program. This was made possible through LFPA, but it really allowed us to conceive of what a more sustainable food supply chain could look like in Tyonek. And there were a lot of supply chain disruptions during the COVID era, and there have been more with egg prices and other food disruptions that are going on with the addition of tariffs. So many things that are going to affect our food supply chain in the very near future, and without the LFPA to help us supplement that. But I just want to point out in the context of Tyonek that we have had a pretty strong local food system. We have a conservation district that has been working on protecting subsistence species and fish passage for well over a decade, as well as a community garden that produces 4,000 pounds of food a year and hydroponics through the winter. And because of their proximity to Anchorage, they have a pretty strong global connection to the global food supply chain compared to other off-the-road system communities. Of course, there are still disruptions, but not to the extent that you see in some of the other areas. So this, in the Tyonek region, really the regional food supply sector of the food system is what was missing. And this has helped us round that out for the first time in a very exciting way, that there was essentially no access to other regional foods grown across the state prior to this program. And so we're on a week-to-week basis, we're seeing orders through the food hub of about 25% of households are ordering weekly, with a value of about $125 per order. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Hi, I'm Tanya Kaloa. I have to stand when I speak. This program is important to me as a tribal member because the cost of transportation right now, we are less than 50 miles outside of the city of Anchorage, and it costs $300 round trip just to get there and back. With my part-time job, that's almost impossible to get to Anchorage to get food. And while doing this food distribution, it just gives me a lot of strength to engage with my community members and my tribal members to get the Alaskan grown food that we all produce here in the state to my community, whether it's hot sauces, cottage food goods, meats, cods. And it's been a blessing to be a part of listening to the feedback at how my tribe is thankful for the network that the state of Alaska does as a whole. And for my tribe, it's important that they know and understand that the food locally is going to show up at least 3-5 days fresher than what we're getting out of state. And I've been working with Kaylee on this for about the past 8 months or so, and I've been getting tremendous feedback from the community. I recently moved home due to the pandemic, the Corona pandemic, because TTCD and the mission meant so much to me that once that plane was no longer running to Tyonek. Tyonek actually shut down as a community. I, as a TTCD staff, was able to be stationed there for a few months for that season in order to keep the garden running. And since that was also a need that I was able to witness and identify, I was like, you know what, this is time for me to start looking at new visions. What is it in my heart that I really love and desire? And it is gardening. I really love to feed the people. And throughout history, I've learned that my great-grandmother also has done that while Russian settlers were here. So we have the strength and the knowledge that we know it's been going on 100 years back. And so to do it now, it just makes sense. I really love this program and it really benefits our community. It helps our elders with freight costs and things like that. I'm honored to be a part of this. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks, Kaylee. Can you just pop it to the next? Okay, and we're gonna stop sharing for just a sec to make sure Evelyn is here.
Montois, I am here.
Hi. Okay, we're just changing some settings and then we'll pull your slide back up. Thank you so much for joining today. Oh, almost. Okay, thank you. Can we put Evelyn back on there? Here, I have an idea. Okay. Okay, so now she's over there for us, but her slide isn't for everybody else. Okay. Okay, well, hi, Evelyn. We're going to share your slide for the online folks, and we see you here in person, but they won't see you when you're talking. So
If you could switch
go
it back,
ahead.
I need the slides.
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
people to see the
Let's do
slides.
it.
So sorry. But I can start talking anyway. My name's Evelyn Trefon, and I am the owner of E&A Produce Markets, which is located in Southwest Alaska, in New Halen, and also Iliamna. So in 2014, I moved to the area in 2013, and in 2014, I founded this business as a desire to feed in my community more fresh fruits and vegetables. When I moved here, I realized how hard it was to get fresh produce because of the supply chain challenges that many people at this conference have talked about. Iliamna is about twice as far as Tyonek. We're about 45 to 55-minute flight from Anchorage. Our round trip prices are $450 per person for residents, $550 for non-residents. And our freight prices range from 65 cents a pound to $1.18 per pound, depending on how fast you need your stuff. Between Iliamna, New Halen's kind of like Eagle River, Anchorage, and the fact that we're connected by one road. So we share a lot of the same services, our airports in Iliamna, the schools in New Halen. So between the two communities, there's about 300 year-round residents. And like I said, I began the business. I started shopping at Costco and just had it shipped out from Anchorage. My friend would go shop at Costco for me and ship it out to Anchorage, from Anchorage to Iliamna. And I literally just loaded it in the back of my car the first few years and just drove door to door, selling it from the back of my car, as you can see in the picture there. And if you can go to the next slide, please. Over the years, so it's 2025 now, so this will be my 11th market season. If you could go back one slide. Thank you so much. The market has evolved to more of a traditional style farmer's market. Even though I'm not technically a farmer's market, I'm classified more of a specialty produce market. I'm not classified as a food hub either, but I am here to talking about my market. In 2020, I joined the Alaska Farmers Market Association, and through AFMA, I was able to figure out how to do this accepting SNAP at my market, and then being able to utilize the SNAP matching program that AFMA offers. And it's the 2023 market season through the AFMA SNAP matching of $45, and then through the local clinic matching additional $20, people were able to spend only $40 of their benefits, but have $100 of buying power for fresh fruits and vegetables in my market, which I thought was a pretty good thing. There's the different kind of markets that Alaska Farmers Market Association qualifies as farmers markets. Of course, Alaska kind of does everything different, so our definition of a farmers market looks a little different too. And there's some other data points on there too. But if you could go to the next slide, please. Like I said, my market doesn't fit the traditional mold of a farmer's market. I currently, the way I operate now, because it's kind of evolved, and every year I have to kind of pivot and think and look at things a little differently, just because of the location of where I can have my market, and then also the freight costs, because that's the most important driving factor as far as the prices are, I feel like, is the freight costs. So what I do is I order from my products, fresh and fruits and vegetables from Anchorage, have them delivered to an air taxi in Anchorage, and then have them flown to Iliamna. There's currently 5 regular air taxis, I guess you could say, that fly to Anchorage. So we're pretty spoiled here. That doesn't happen a lot in rural Alaska. And we also have a paved runway, which never really happens in rural Alaska. So we're here in Iliamna. It's pretty amazing. But I try to support as many locally grown and made Alaskan products. So I do have branched out and sold like Denali Dreams and Alaska chips and different things that I can try to support Alaskan businesses with my buying power, and then enabling the residents here to buy too. Last year too, I was able to purchase from local farms or gardens up north in Port Ellsworth and down south in Igiugig. But because our school district isn't funding our school breakfast and lunch program, they were only able to sell me just a little bit of what they grew last year, because they were saving it for their schools to be able to feed their local schools. Like I said, there's lots of pivoting every year as far as where I'm going to be able to have my market, and then just the shipping costs fluctuate greatly every year, and then what products I can actually offer. Something else I've been noticing too, as I've been looking at my produce labels a lot more, seeing where things are come from, because since I order a lot of things from Anchorage, this butternut squash I bought in December, it's from Mexico. So with the tariffs coming up, that's going to be also another concern as far as costs and what I can order. Freight prices have increased 35% in the past 5 years. Currently, the cheapest freight is about 65 cents a pound, but they only fly to Iliamna 3 times a week. So it gets tricky as far as with coordination and trying to figure out who can take 500 to 600 pounds, which is what my average market weighs when it flies out here, on which days, and if they have enough room and that sort of thing. And I think that might be my last slide, but I don't remember honestly. Oh, nope, one more, sorry. So then last year, I was able to purchase some carrots and Brussels sprouts from C. Nettles and Palmer, which was amazing. And I was able to sell their beautiful produce here in New Halen, and there's nothing like an Alaskan carrot, as I think we all know. So that was just amazing. And the Brussels sprouts were super good too. The Romanescos, nobody had ever seen one. So I think it's pretty cool that I can introduce new things, and then I provide recipes so people know how to process and cook them. And then turnips and beets, which I had never ate a beet in my life. And these beets from Port Ellsworth were amazing, and I absolutely love beets now. So that was pretty cool to discover too. You can see the next picture there. Most of the years of my market I've set up in the clinic parking lot, because it just kind of is a natural fit to sell my produce at the clinic parking lot. And then last year I did it just in my driveway at my house, and it worked pretty well too. So it's a lot more convenient, obviously, to sell it out of my driveway than from up the street at the clinic. So I think I might do that this year too. But we'll see where life happens. My market's rain or shine though, because I try to keep consistency for people so that they just know Wednesday's the market or Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever the case may be. And then yeah, through AFMA too, they would offer marketing supplies. So I was able to print out the summer market postcards and mail them to everybody, which is super helpful because postage is just out of control now too. But my contact information is there too. If anybody wants to find out what's on sale when peaches are here or cherries or whatever, follow me on Facebook. I always try to post as much as I can on what's going on for my produce market. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. I'm
Thank
sorry
you
I
so
can't
much,
be in
Evelyn.
person. I wish I could be.
I know we wish you were too. But thank you for being here. And okay, Erica, are you around? Your slides are next.
Yes, Sundance, I'm right here.
Ooh, okay. We see you. We're
I
still
see.
having some issues sharing the screen and the participant view at the same time, but
You're doing a great job.
that's all right. Let's do that. All right. So go ahead. Oh, but then we got to click over. Yeah. Okay. Well, go right ahead.
it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sundance. Thank you. And thank you, Evelyn, too. So my name is Erica Merklin, and I live here in the Chilkat Valley. I am a board member of the Four Winds Resource Center, which you can see here in this photo. It's an old school that was closed down in 2014 due to lack of enrollment. The enrollment dipped below 11. The school was closed, and since then, a group of volunteers have turned this into a community center. So one of the things that we've done at the community center is we started, well, a food bank, or a food hub, and it's called the Chilkat Valley Food Hub. And our motto is, "You belong here." And you can send it to the next slide. So the Chilkat Valley Food Hub is located in the upper Chilkat Valley. So we're about 10 miles from the Canadian border, from BC, and about 30 miles actually from town. Where the Chilkat Valley Food Hub is located in the Four Winds Resource Center is 5 miles from the village of Klukwan. So this project really took shape really in 2023 and then was actually able to be funded in 2024. We initiated sort of this whole project around food through the Victory Garden, which is a 6,000 square foot garden. We did fundraisers, as you can see here. This is our like the cafeteria of the school is the top photo. And then below you can see outside we have tents set up where we actually had a farmer's market going on that day. And we do workshops and things like that to grow our own food, which we then distribute weekly through the Chilkat Valley Food Hub. We also do a few other programs. All of our programs really are focused with partnerships. Specifically, we're working with the Salvation Army, and we do monthly community food box distribution in the Upper Valley. Just last summer, Stacy Paulison, who's the Chilkat Valley Food Hub manager, she worked with the Summer Food Service Program. And in that program last year, she provided 1,775 meals to youth while school was not in session. And then she's also worked with about 39 families with our Southeast Alaska Food Bank food pantry. So we are actually a satellite of the Southeast Alaska Food Bank. And, you know, listening to Evelyn speak about the how difficult it is to get the food to the community, that's something that we're really experiencing. Just simply even trying to get from Haines to Juneau to get food to bring back to the community. We've had ferries broken down. The cost to ship it on AML or through the airlines is just too much. It's just too much for you know, our small budget. So we are also conducting a lot of workshops and educational events too. If you could send it to the next slide, Sundance. We, you know, a main focus of what we're really doing is a lot of community building, and people are showing up every week to these Victory Garden work parties where we're also doing food distribution, fresh food distribution, and then people have an opportunity to go to the food pantry and get food from that. We are luckily being supported through Rural Cap. They're helping to support the Victory Garden by funding the Victory Garden coordinator position this year. We also received a Rural Cap Foundation grant, which we were able to purchase a commercial fridge and freezer, which we're hoping to really fill this year. Hopefully with things just right out of the garden. And we've also had a lot of success with local fishermen donating fish too. So that's been great. And you can see here some photos of us working together. Our food pantry is small, but it is much appreciated, and it is very well attended. And you can see some in the top right hand corner, just some of the commodity foods that people are that we're distributing monthly in the Salvation Army boxes. And then I love this photo on the bottom because we grew so many cauliflowers, and our biggest cauliflower was 8 pounds this last year, and it was just absolutely amazing to work together and be able to produce that amount of food. Can you send it to the next slide? And then right now, I wanted to just make sure that I really recognize some of the partnerships that we've developed and who we are working closely with, and just so appreciative of the support that we've gotten. And as we move forward, some of the things that we're working on, feels like no good deed goes unpunished, but our local government now is feeling like they don't want to support this facility anymore. So we, as a board, are trying to figure out what we're going to do to be able to move forward and still maintain the efforts that we'd like to be able to provide to our community in the Upper Valley. So we're working on trying to figure that component out. As I mentioned, I really want to grow enough food and be able to get food from the food bank in Juneau to fill our fridge and freezer, and really work towards also community storage for root crops and things like that. Really hoping to be able to streamline what we're able to offer at the through our food bank with some kind of a software program, and then really be able to encourage other local producers to really be able to get involved and try to figure out the next step of monetizing our food bank. Right now, we have a lot of partnerships with organizations where we get donations, and yeah, I think that might be it. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Erica. We are gonna switch screen sharing one more time. Stop. Can you share? Tab. There. Okay.
Tell me what to do next. Hi, everyone. I'm Saleh Azizi, coming here from Hawaii. I founded this Food Hub Hui, which is a network of 15 food hubs today in Hawaii. And we really came together as a Hui, which means a group or a tightly knit group. We came together because there were systemic things and that impacted each of our individual food hubs, but none of them could do anything about individually. We actually had to form a collective to address some of those things. And so that's how we formed the Food Hub Hui. A little bit about me. I came to Hawaii about 20 years ago, and during the process of doing my dissertation, moved out to an organic farm. And this organic farm was actually very successful. Whoop. Okay. They established over established over 50 different accounts. Established over 50 different accounts with grocery stores and with restaurants and cafes and institutions. And so one of the questions that came up for us at the organic farm was, how can we extend this service to our community? And so in 2017, I was part of starting the Kahumana Organic Farm and Food Hub. And the year after, I met other food hubs in Hawaii that really that we needed support with advocacy, because a lot of people didn't know what a food hub was or what it was supposed to do. Even some food hubs didn't call themselves food hubs, but they were doing food hub activities. And so that's kind of how we came together as a support group for one another. Ah, thank you. Much like here, and you heard from Mike's presentation, you know, Hawaii is struggling with importing 90% of our food that is being consumed. Um, Actually, pretty much all over the world today, people are importing that number of food, which is because we all buy our food mostly in the grocery stores. And so though the chains that serve the grocery stores have become national and global and don't bother to bring in small organic or family farmers. And so we do have the 90% problem, but so does many other places, which is the reason why we want to build a local infrastructure for getting local food into our stores, into people's homes, into the schools. Um, can go to next slide. Makes a lot of sense for a lot of people to work with food hubs, especially now that places have a target on how much local you want to eat, which we have in Hawaii. We have laws that require us to have 30% local in schools and other public institutions by 2030. But it's a challenge. You know, should a school cafeteria worker reach out to roughly, 40 to 50 farmers just to have a steady supply of tomatoes, cucumbers, cabbage, and other things? So that's really where our food hubs come in, and they make it much easier. Let's see. Okay, so the food hubs make it much easier, of course, to purchase from our local farms. And when the food hubs are not around to organize our farmers, there could be, one or two restaurants that decide to buy some local food, but eventually, because it's really difficult for them, they will go to the export option. And we're back into the same challenge. Another 90% in Hawaii is our farmers. 90% of them, 92 actually, are small family farmers. Many of them don't have access to local markets because the large distributors will not pick them up. So they have to reinvent things from scratch. But in my feeling is that these guys are the foundation of our sustainable agriculture, and that's where we really need to work. So this is our food hub Hui today. We're 15 food hubs strong. all the way from Kauai with Malama Kauai to 4 food hubs on Oahu, 1 on Molokai, 2 on Maui, and I think now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the Big Island. And so that's how much we've grown. Not all of them do the same thing. Some food hubs supply other food hubs. Some food hubs focus on CSA customers. Some food hubs focus on large wholesale orders. Others are much more into um, serving the community through produce prescription programs. So there's various models as to what our food hubs are working on. We have 15 food hubs. The sales in 2024 was roughly 20.5 million with these 15 food hubs. Over 70% of that makes it directly back to our farmers. In 2024 alone, we supported 1,700 farms in Hawaii. And since I've started collecting this data, about $63 million has gone back to our farms. And so it's good data, but it really tells a bigger story. We're creating systems where farmers want to be involved, where they want to continue farming, where they have and can afford to hire labor and increase their farms. And finally, we can arrive at a society where we have healthy and thriving farmers. And that's what I've seen food hubs be able to contribute to. And this is partly the reason why in our local food system, which is a short supply chain, the produce just doesn't change hands all that many times. And so you go to the global food system that you were mentioning, the producer makes 10 cents out of every dollar that you and I spend in the store on average. And with our food hubs, our producers make 70 cents of every dollar that they sell produce for. So big difference. A little bit about how our food hubs were formed. About between 1990 and 2010, about 35% of our food hubs were started by small family farmers who wanted to extend that service to other farmers. And so many of them kept their farm, but also started a food hub. A whole different wave. So that was a lot of farmers getting into market access for other farmers. A whole different wave of food hubs came about around 2015 to 2020 when the food desert problem became much more relevant in the US. And actually, a lot of our nonprofits that did food banking turned into food hubs, which are two, from how we see it, two separate things. But they would distribute food quite often from other places, and then they started a farm that would aggregate food from local farms and have that in their distributions. Finally, another 30% of our food hubs, they started food hubs during COVID when both food access and supporting farms was needed. And this is roughly the services that we provide as a network. And it's really practitioner-led. So these are priorities that came from our food hubs. The biggest things has been around fundraising. And so all of the food hubs have reached capacity and they have potential to increase and build larger food hubs to support more farms, to support more communities. So my role has been to do a lot of fundraising. And as part of that, also that fundraising has happened in the legislature where we have promoted bills for the state to have food hub specific grant programs. Other things is community of practitioners. That's a function of our network. People talk about, what kind of SOP do I need for washing this produce and what SOP do I need for delivering it, and learn from each other in that way. Market matchmaking and coordination with more complex customers like school systems and hospitals is something we provide. And yeah, always advocating for our food hubs. I just wanted to show this too. This is a study that was done in Hawaii. The number would probably be a lot greater today, but if we only replace 10% of imported food in Hawaii, then That would result in about $300 million of local food. And that would result in over 2,000 employees, increased food security by 20%, and all these sales and taxes that you see. So there's quite a beneficial effect of having more locally food grown, and that has been measured and shown in this study. That might be it for me. Thank you.
I only have 2 slides, so this is great. Be very quick. Joke in the world of food hubs that if you've seen one food hub, you've seen, I think we're kind of hearing that so far, that everybody's a little different and we can't really even at a national level agree on what the word means, food hub. So nationally, Kitchen Sink works with about 20 food hubs to help them sell their food to the complex institutional buyers that Sally mentioned. And so it's a real privilege to get to see exactly why the differences in each of those food hubs matters. And also listen for the essential truths that food hubs face as challenges, the leverage points they have in whatever market they're in. And so in the session right before this, we're just talking about this notion of value chain coordination that helps niche or small producers trace their products and the value that those products have throughout the whole transactional process. Food hubs are businesses that are very uniquely positioned to deliver on the promise of value chain coordination because they're, as we hear, pretty intimately bound by the fate of their local producers. That cannot be said for Cisco or US Foods because they can get apples or oranges or whatever from whomever, and that's the systems that they work in and develop. That's not even a diss. I don't mean to throw shade on it. That's just an objective analysis of how food hubs work. So if we really care about, if you hear somebody talking about, oh, we really care about small farmers, ask them about food hubs. And I think the work of the food hubs across Alaska is a testament to that. It's also really hard to do. It's an extraordinarily difficult business model because of all the challenges we're hearing from the previous folks, transit and production and all these other issues that I won't say plague, but that are difficult to address here are not something to be trivialized. And despite the joke about food hubs, like no one is fully unique. And so all of these challenges in the work that we do with hubs across different kinds of food hub networks or different regions across the US, they're all familiar. And so if there's one thing, if you are a hub or you know a hub, like just tell them they're not alone. And there's success stories that can, I'm convinced, be somehow relevant to the specifics of what Tayonet Gather is dealing with or what the marketplaces we heard earlier are dealing with. It's going to look a little different, but there are very successful food hubs navigating pretty weird, complicated distribution challenges, not the least of which is the Hawaii Food Hub Hui. Barges are in play, air freight is in play, figuring out how a small entity can partner with way bigger third-party freight partners isn't impossible, but there is a growing network and slowly but surely at a national level, we're getting our voice around this. And I'm excited to listen more closely to the challenges that are here in Alaska and figure out what applies. Compressed growing seasons, same kind of thing. We work with food hubs in places that have a 4.5-month growing season, which is about what you'd expect carrots to be available fresh anyways. They have to figure out how to make that harvest last too. What can be learned from the northeastern corner of Montana, which is functionally off the road system and quite dispersed. They're figuring stuff out. I would love for all of that information to be shared, and I plan on doing that, Robbie, through our efforts. I'll just say that the Hawaii Food Hub Hui has been a pretty inspirational thing for me to watch. Working with 20 or 30 others in Saleh's work is like pretty deep. And the commitment, I think we're hearing that from everybody. There's so much. I mean, Tanya, what you shared is sort of the purpose here. Like this stuff matters for reasons more than margins or grant reports. And food hubs can can be anchors to make sure that food systems in our communities have conviction, that they have intention, and partnering with folks across multiple sales channels. I think like there's a real play to be made for like the public sector paying for this, like straight up, like this is a public good. And food hubs deliver, they ensure economic impact, they employ people, they fix the problems of our predecessors environmentally, all of which could be measured in dollars and cents. And at the root, there's a little bit deeper value that they bring. Like the mission of our company is to help people and institutions be in relationship with their food and farmers. We work for food hubs all over because that's what they do. And so, yeah, if there's like a whisper of hope, no one's ever really alone in this. Everybody is a little weird in this space, and food hubs are unique. We can figure out find some other weirdos that are weird in the way that we are all over. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. And Ken is next.
And we're gonna, so we see you down there, but we're gonna go through your slides and then we'll move the slides out of the way so we'll all be able to see your face. But it looks good on the Zoom side. It's okay.
Great. Well, it's really good to be here. I'm sorry that I was not able to come to Kodiak myself. I was lucky enough to have Robbie Thompson Dental to tour me around in actually almost 10 years ago now. And I'm really blown away by how much has developed and changed in Kodiak since I was there. And really, unfortunately, I cannot be there in person, but I'm also going to do a very quick set of comments, but I think my points are really on this slide. First of all, we like the Hui in Hawaii, and like what Elliot was saying, you know, we use the words food hub in quotations because we had groups in our network that didn't call themselves food hubs when we started. And I think that, you know, so over time, they've come to think themselves more as food hubs, but I think that Elliot's absolutely right in terms of his analysis that the coordination role that food hubs play is really pretty critical. I've really seen the food hub network here in Alaska get much closer. I think in the 2023 conference, when I came up, people were a little bit tentative and talking to each other and really didn't know much about each other's places, but we've done some visits to get people to go back and forth and share stories with each other, do some new trainings together, and to really talk in better ways about how to coordinate their efforts. And I'm really thrilled by how much coordination and connection has happened in the last year and a half. It's also unfortunate that 2 of the food hubs have closed, and others nationally that were bigger and had more production at their capacity have also been either folded or have been sold or what have you. And I think that I'm hoping to work with the RFBC in Alaska to understand why the food hubs that closed have had some difficulty. But I think the main thing I would say now is that food hubs need support. They need a web of support, a network of support around them. And that's why I really love the concept of a Hui, where you have a network of people who are intentional about building trust together and really try to work on coordination and share stories with each other and learn from each other. And I think we often start thinking about hubs as businesses rather than as something that helps a network form. And I think that you know, there were some cases in the Homer Food Hub that some of the farmers felt like they wanted to work around the food hub. They didn't feel a real strong need for having a hub there. So I think we have to think really carefully about what kind of network of support do we need for food hubs to thrive, especially in a place like Alaska where things are very challenging. The other thing I've found people kind of expect food hubs to really become self-supporting businesses, and that's very unlikely to happen. And actually some of the people who've claimed to have profitability right away then folded after about 2 years. But I think that one of the things we have to come up with as a society is the resources to invest in this networking and building food hubs, food webs, Huis, so that we really are funding that process in a reliable way. I like what Elliot said about having that be a public or municipal activity. And in Alaska, I think it's especially critical to expand food production because the more food that farmers are able to produce and the more we can get that to consumers, the more food hubs in Alaska can thrive. I think, Hawaii is really, I should say, I did a study in Hawaii in 2013 and again, amazed at the growth of that network since I was there. But I think also Hawaii has some places with 4 growing seasons. And so there's some opportunities in Hawaii that are very difficult to replicate in Alaska. Let me go to the next slide. And this is just a concept for a food web that I brought to the Alaska Food Summit in 2014. And this is a real naive kind of concept of like, what would it mean to network people together in Alaska? We didn't at all foresee that Homer would become the first food hub in the state. And this is more thinking about where population centers were and where food might have to travel. But the idea was to build a web of relationships, to build a web of connections that people are talking with each other. And I think a lot of that work has happened, even though the map today looks very different than the one we had in 2014. But I'm really thrilled to see lots of motion in this direction. Next slide, please. And then that actually came out of a map we did in South Carolina in a report we did called Making Small Farms Big Business. And I think the insight I want to pass on here is that we talked about a food web for South Carolina more than 10 years ago now. And that was based on comments that the food hub in Charleston gave us. There was a very good, strong food hub in Charleston. I think it's still going strong in a community that has long growing season and lots of restaurants that are buying and making local farms very visible and a lot of potential for local foods happening. And what the food hub there said was, we don't need more food hubs, we need more nodes. We need more infrastructure on the farm level so that people can store more product on the farm, or they have a place they can stage and put things into clamshells and put it on a pallet to deliver to us. And so we developed this idea of a food web that included hubs as well as both on-farm infrastructure and both nodes and hubs that would really kind of convey across the statewide a lot of good food. And I just want to kind of put in a pitch for, this is about building Hui's, it's about building webs, it's about building networks and about collaborating. And that's what I would want to add to this conversation. But it's also, I'll be working with Tyanek in the next year. I've worked a little bit with Erica. I've known Sala for a number of years, and it's really great to, and Elliot and I talked about collaborating, I think 4 years ago, and this is the first time we've had a chance to do that. So thank you for having me here, and I look forward to the questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Ken. So panelists, I'm just gonna let us look at the Zoom people. There's 15 participants. There's Ken. Do you want to unspotlight Ken? Hi, Ken. So I know that a ton of people in the room and online have experience with food hubs, and I would love to hear you all talk to each other. And maybe you could zoom out the video for the folks in the front so we can see both sides. And I can pass a mic around the audience here if anybody wants to say anything. All right.
My name's Lauren. I work for the state. They say there's no stupid questions. So thought I'd give it a try. I appreciated all the presentations, and I noticed that every presentation had beautiful photos. And in most or all of those photos, the food items were beautiful, and they had their kind of low sugar content, high fiber, very good stuff. Not all the photos, but almost every one of them. So my stupid question is, I understand value chain and also supply chain, what are the most key things that prevents highly processed foods and highly glycemic foods from entering these systems? And of course, I have a vision of someone in my brain, which is a fictional person that lives in remote Alaska that is socially and biologically addicted to highly processed foods.
I think I'll offer one thing, and then certainly Ken, Evelyn, if you want to chime in. Like, I think the design, the premise of a food hub is, yeah, essentially to be embedded in the local economy. And so I would say that it's probably explainable maybe that highly processed food is not the kind of stuff you're finding in your backyard or your neighbor's backyard. That's stuff that happens in facilities and factories, which has to go far away. So that's the kind of stuff that distributors, large scale distributors, will tend to carry and make sizable margins on the sales of. But I mean, it's not that there's not unhealthy food in food hubs. Candies and locally made, perhaps high glycemic products might be a thing, but that's not ever been a characteristic that's really represented any of the food hubs that I've engaged with, because it's not what's made where they are.
Maybe a better question is, outside of the instance of being in Anchorage and grabbing items from, say, Costco, hand carrying them and having a food hub in that fashion, are there other instances where highly processed foods would enter a food hub?
This is Erica. I feel like I could answer that too, but Kaylee, I see you have the mic now.
Go ahead, Erica.
Oh, yes. Well, I just would like to make reference to some of the photos that were in my presentation, and namely the distribution that's coming from the Salvation Army. So a lot of the shelf-stable foods are highly processed, and that is based on what's available, quite honestly. And I really would love to see more locally sourced foods, specifically fish, locally raised chickens, and vegetables. But we're also in a situation where, it's my video, where, where we aren't in a position to really have access to that much fresh food right now. And bringing it in is expensive. And these are foods that we can access. It's a low barrier to be able to access this food and distribute it.
Yeah, I think just in terms of Tyonic's context, our goal was to develop a regional food hub, regional food supply chain that connected the breadth of rapidly growing Alaskan producers to a market in Tyonic. And that included fresh, minimally processed foods. There certainly are lots of ways that ultra processed foods could be incorporated into a food hub. I can certainly see a scenario, particularly in remote regions or anywhere where there's high demand, to include those types of products in a supply chain in a regional supply chain that we're establishing as a food hub. But I think something Elliot was kind of getting at is while there isn't a definition, a premise of food hubs has been to support producers. And while that does certainly include products sometimes further down the value chain, a lot of times it aggregates minimally processed or fresh foods.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. I think you just opened up a very different session with that question. I'm Rachel. I'm with the Food Bank of Alaska, and I want to point out there's a lot of different points in this conversation around food aid, access, and rights. My understanding of food hubs is that this is a market-based model, right? So you provide things that the market asks for. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Evelyn, I'm thinking about you, and you said you expanded into potato chips and soap. right? Because that's what people were looking for in your community. So I do wonder if this is a case by case basis where each food hub chooses to say we offer only minimally processed goods. My concern when we talk about, or when we implicitly put our own values on definitions of food hubs with a blanket, it's a little bit like the farmers market complex where people who have SNAP, they use WIC credits, do not feel safe in those places. They don't feel welcome because there's this bougie lens on food hubs. So I think that question is really important, Lauren. I think we have to be really mindful in how we answer it. If food hubs are meant to be fully inclusive for local folks, everybody eats potato chips and everybody deserves to eat potato chips. So I think I just think that this is a really deep conversation that is probably a session for the next conference. That wasn't a question, sorry.
I think I'll just add to something that's interesting about processed versus non-processed is when I moved here, and like I said, when I moved here in 2013, it was really hard to have fresh fruits and vegetables, but the at that time there were two local stores and the local stores saw what I was doing, and now there's actually more fresh fruits and vegetables offered in the local stores than there was 10 years ago. So I could see a direct correlation of them seeing how my business has been able to provide that for our community, and they're like, oh well, if she can do it, surely we can do it too, especially since they're open 7 days a week, however many hours a day, and that sort of thing. So I think that's something worth pointing out as well.
Thanks so much. We have a couple questions in the Zoom chat. I'm going to read. Oh, Megan had a hand. Hi, I see you now.
Hey, I just wanted to add something real quick to that perspective in terms of processed food on the marketplace. I run the Salt and Soil Marketplace. We refer to ourselves as a food hub, but more colloquially as an online farmers market. And we have to service two different entities, the consumers who are interested in local food, but also the local producers that are in the community that want a low barrier market. And some of those producers are backyard gardeners selling that minimally processed product. And some of the producers are selling items like jams and jellies and baked goods that are going to be a little bit more processed, higher in sugar. So we do have to make sure that the platform is available to those individuals too. And I would just posit this as a way that we've worked around including those types of producers, but also making sure that we are prioritizing the minimally processed vendors. And that is that because we sell on consignment and we do place a markup for operational capacity on the products that are sold on the marketplace, we have a higher markup structure on products that are what we call like farther away from our mission alignment. So the more processed a product is, it is going to have a higher markup value and make it a little bit more expensive on the marketplace so that folks shopping, there's a kind of like, I don't want to say a price barrier, but it's going to cost the producer who has a product that's more processed, a little bit more money to participate on the marketplace than the individual who's coming with a minimally processed product. And it's kind of created its own way of ensuring that the products that are most mission aligned are those that are selling at the highest volume on the marketplace. I just wanted to offer that as an alternative perspective.
Yeah, thanks so much, Megan. Anybody else want to continue that line, Sally?
Yeah, it reminded me of something that happened during the pandemic, which was a lot of people joined food hubs and started buying local food during the pandemic. And sort of what I heard from this, he was a founder of a software that did the online transactions, was that they went to multiple places to shop. And so for all of the more fresh and healthy and local goods and their support for the local farmers so they don't, go out of business, they went to the food hub and then they went to the other store for the other stuff. Yeah, we don't, our food hubs in Hawaii have a pretty clear separation. They don't really sell tons of what we would call highly processed or unhealthy foods. We do have one food hub that recently started selling local alcohol, which could be consumed too much. um, but yeah, I haven't seen any food hubs trying to really become Walmart or Costco.
Thank you, Saleh.
Hi, this is Jessica with Ag West. I'm curious collectively if the group thinks it's kind of a chicken or the egg, if we need more farmers or more buyers. And Hawaii might be different than Alaska.
What a great question. To have more buyers, you need more farmers, and then you need more I mean, to me it looks like a back and forth kind of dance. And I saw the question too in the chat, right? Like, how do you start a food hub? I've seen food hubs start with an anchor of a few farms that are looking for better markets. And I've also seen places where the community is so central in the food access they need that they've worked from there to find the farmers. And then from there, it sort of becomes a dance. That's in my experience.
And I think it's both. I'm a buyer, but I want to be a farmer. So hopefully that's the next step, but that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a clear answer. I think it is a chicken or the egg situation. We obviously have had more food hubs operating in the past and that have gone down. And so I, particularly the one that closed last year, would be very interested to know how that affects producers this coming year and whether they perceive that that was a loss of market or not, and they're easily absorbed by other markets. But I think to the extent that we want to grow food hubs so that all residents of the state have access to Alaskan grown products, then we need both. We need a lot more food hubs and we need more producers growing to fill that supply. But in looking at some of Ken's slides when he was talking about these food webs, it really makes me reflect how we in Tyonek, as being one of 20 some tribes who received LFPA grants, we use that to be able to launch a food hub for this community. But if every one of those communities that received that grant did the same model, how inefficient that supply chain would be across the state, and how we might not have enough food to supply all of those systems that we're bringing in, like 20 gallons of Alaska range dairy milk to Tyonek every week, which is amazing that we're able to provide local milk to a community who would otherwise, get their milk elsewhere, and all types of foods, fish and meat that they're getting locally. But how much better it would be to have a food web where all of these tribes have systems of regionally aggregating and have a more centralized way, instead of every single one having to develop their own isolated food hub system and their own relationships with all of those vendors and producers. It would be really terribly inefficient.
And the thing too about that as well is it would cost the same amount for me last year to get the carrots from Port Ellsworth versus getting them from Anchorage. So it's a matter of the freight cost as well throughout rural Alaska.
Yeah, and just one more example from Hawaii. We have a food hub on the island of Molokai, which has 7,000 people, which we consider small. And I realize that that's not always small when you're here. But so that food hub had tried to support their local farms for a long time by creating market demand. So they only provided what their farms had on the island, and they never really kicked off because the consumers would buy it was so irregular that the farmers would never get used to it. And then again, they had to invent their own food hub where they sold 10% of their carrots to the food hub and 90% they had to find other customers for, which means that they're becoming a food hub themselves now. And so the food hub reached out to Maui Food Hub and started purchasing produce from Maui, and then brought the market up several levels where people were consistently buying because they knew the things would consistently come. And then the food hub started working with their farmers to start growing the things that people are buying.
Rachel Lord.
Thanks you guys so much. And I mean, I have so many thoughts, but I will not say them all. I have a question for you, Saleh, because, and it's a little bit going back to something that Ken said, that I feel like there are maybe two different things that are happening or could happen or have happened or should happen. And I don't know where the ground is in that. And the idea that, you know, I guess two questions I have. One very direct one is the food hub then that you just talked about on Molokai, where that kind of buying elsewhere and doing that additional aggregation and market development for the farmers on Molokai, is that food hub financially sustainable? Are food hubs on Hawaii or in Hawaii financially sustainable? And that might, I don't know if that's an answerable question. And a little bit kind of going to the idea, if food hubs aren't unto themselves financially sustainable, it really begs a question to me about the financial sustainability of our individualized farms. And it feels like that is a structural challenge that I would hope, and I think, you know, that our, and I think we see that as we see a lot of new and beginning farmers coming in, but also blinking out. Like the retention is not super good all the time, in having, we have so many people that want to be farmers, and it is hard. So I guess I just, you know, they have to be viable as businesses to be able to like feed their kids and, you know, do like pay the land lease or the mortgage or whatever. So yeah, so I guess that's my question for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a great question. I think that's the question of right now that we're all facing, because like it was shared, 2 food hubs disappeared here, right? Nationally, this is happening. And you can certainly see how the support and grants that are out there for food hubs make the urgency to be self-sufficient a little bit, make it a little bit more urgent, right? And so I would say we have majority of our food hubs that are sustainable, and they've utilized the grant funding to sort of expand and provide more services, because they're still just in certain pilot locations, and that way the benefit gets out to more people. The food hub that we talked about had struggled at $50,000 of revenue a year for 5 years and more. And once they made this move, they were able to go to 400,000. And now you can start seeing sustainability. Part of what our network does is look at the business model of a food hub. You know, if you have that producer equity objective that they should receive 70 cents of the dollars you make, then you have the 30% is your margin to pay your staff, to pay your rent, to pay all of these things, right? So now they're getting much closer to that. But in general, yes, we do see food hubs that are sustainable, and we see some that are not and that need more support.
Not in a Hawaiian context, but the question of the like fates being bound to the small producers, I think, is a really important one for everybody to grapple with. Like, not that farmers need food hubs to be farmers, but food hubs need farmers to be food hubs. And if state, I mean, I'm just picking on states big time right now, but if the state in any state says that they care about this, I would expect what that means is they're willing to invest in what intermediaries who bind themselves to those producers need, which sounds like infrastructure grants for food hubs. It sounds like requirements from state-funded institutions to procure from those entities. And across the country, there's lots of recognition like, oh crap, the cost of not having it is tremendous. And usually if you come to the point of realizing how much that costs, it's too late. It's like when farmland goes out of being farmland, it's gone. It's never going to come back. So a question to throw back, I think, to the rest of the group that's here for the conference is like, how much do you care about it? Like, what's the DivAg talking about? How much is this a priority?
anyone online want to say anything?
I guess I would just add that, the local food hub in Charlottesville, Virginia is a kind of interesting example to me because it was one of the first food hubs. It was renowned as one of the best model food hubs nationally. It went for 7 years and got up well over $1 million of sales, maybe more than 1 million. Maybe much more, I'm not sure, but certainly met the $1.5 million level. But what happened was they never really were paying for the cost of operating a food hub from their sales. But the other thing they tried to do is they tried to divide the education work they did to work with farmers to bring buyers in to really do the educational work, to do the infrastructure grants that Elliot's talking about. And they tried to separate those into two different businesses. What happened was that they sold the food distribution to a private firm who ran it for about 6 months and then closed it down. So the community is no longer being served. And the educational work is no longer happening because the food hub, closed its doors, and so it's I think the problem is when you say food hubs should be self-sustaining. They probably maybe never will be because there are always going to be new things to challenge. The banker we worked with in South Carolina had a very pithy comment. He said, we have to balance supply and demand at every step of the way from getting where we are today to where we want to be in the future. And so that means you have modular construction, you have to be able to grow up, get bigger, and get smaller. But I think food hubs are going to take a subsidy, and the more educational work you do, the more connecting you do farmers and consumers, the more you do work with people to help make sure people have healthier diets. All of that is stuff that's not going to make a profit. It's going to take subsidy. And I think most of the food hubs out there that are self-sufficient if they have a good grant flow. I don't know any that are really self-sufficient strictly on sales. So there's nothing wrong with a business model, that social entrepreneurship model, where you're earning income and you're doing efficient work and you're earning some part of a livelihood doing that. But I think the transition we're making will require massive public subsidy over decades, and we can't really weasel out of that reality. We have to find ways to find public support to make that process really robust.
Thanks, Ken. There was a Zoom question earlier about the Alaska Food Hub closure, and if anyone wanted to speak to that. So I'm going to pass it to.
Sure, I can respond to that. There was also another question about how to start a food hub. There's many ways, but I wanted to point out part of our LFPP project that resulted in Ken's recommendation report. The other piece to that was a Alaska Food Hub Toolkit, which is housed on the Alaska Farmers Market Association Toolkit. So we crowdsourced all kinds of resources from our food hub operators and gave lots of different pathways to starting a food hub. We haven't quite figured out how to continue to sustain them, though. So the Alaska Food Hub shut down this past December. I do want to point out Kara Hardy, who was the coordinator, isn't here today. So I am speaking as someone who started the Food Hub along with Rachel Lord, and then I operated it for 6 years. Then Kara carried it on for the last 4. So she may definitely have information and perspective to add. So this is just my perspective. But when we started the Food Hub, it was housed at a regional nonprofit cook inlet keeper. Rachel gathered the grant for that, and then I weaseled in somehow to help operate it and launch it. It was meant to be a 2-year pilot funded through the local food promotion program. Cook Inlet Keeper really liked it. They were able to connect with more folks around the region and bring awareness to their other work as well. So there was multiple reasons why I was housed at Inlet Keeper, but that mission is a watershed protection, very environmental justice oriented, and not local food necessarily, but a way of building more economic resilience within the watershed. So as the years went on, every year we had a kind of a debrief on how the previous year looked. We definitely peaked during COVID-19. I think we quadrupled our sales, at least that first year. And then as the pandemic wrapped up, we saw those sales dwindle as well. We saw farmers set up their own online stores, and that's great. That's a success out of the Food Hub, building more business acumen through the Food Hub. And then we also saw a lot of leadership change at that nonprofit. So I think we went through maybe 4 different executive directors in that time. I moved away and dug into the Food Policy Council full time. And so just different leaders had different ideas. And to be super transparent, Inlet Keeper had to look at their finances, and the Food Hub was costing them, significant money, at least to them, and they chose to sunset the program. So that's that. It's awesome that there's so many farmers markets on the Kenai Peninsula as well. I think that a lot of the farmers will be absorbed into those markets. And also we've seen a few like Snowshoe Hollow and Homer set up their online store. So it's not a fun story, but it's what I know. And again, Kira may have more input on that. And Rachel, I don't know if you want to add anything as a vendor and also one of the founders.
Well, and I mean, this has been a topic of conversation like all winter at home. And from pretty much day one, the Alaska Food Hub was, I mean, I met with Kyla Byers in Anchorage in like year 1 or 2 to be like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah, I mean, it has really been, I mean, from day one, it was like, this is an incubation project that is looking for a home, and ideally looking for a home where it can be a viable business. And I kind of continue to believe that at least like on the road system with the kind of density of farming that we have, that would be possible, but it requires somebody who wants to do it, right? And do it in that frame. I did not, right? So no shade at anybody one way or the other. At that time, I very much did not want to do that. And I also left Inlet Keeper pretty much immediately. But I had been there for a decade, so it was okay. But when I was researching for writing the grant, there were a couple of things that at least from that time really stuck out to me. And one was that food hubs often started as retail market, which is essentially what we continue to do. And that for that longer term sustainability, it's breaking into those institutional markets. It's really aggregating to be able to get into where do a lot of our our federal dollars go, into schools, hospitals, like where there's a lot of buying happening, and these larger markets, so that a lot of our smaller farmers would never really be able to break into, but that you're doing that aggregation to be able to meet that institutional demand. And then the other part that was really, really appealing to my senses as thinking about from a business perspective of like people wanting to be farmers, but as a small farmer, you are also an accountant, you're an HR manager, you are a salesman and a market specialist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, how cool to just have a space where you can be a farmer. And so there was also, in at least again at that time, and like looking, knowing that Ken's here and Saleh and Elliot, and I'm sure there's other research on this that's more up to date because this was really old, but the other piece of exclusivity contracts and having producers willing to say, I am selling to you, Food Hub, because you are providing me this value where I don't have to go sit at the farmer's market for 7 hours every Saturday. I don't have to hustle my CSAs. I don't have to hustle my restaurant contracts. I am selling to you and you alone. And now I'm really getting that benefit, right? So as a producer, I was doing the same thing. I had subscriptions, I had restaurants and clients, and I was going to the farmers market, and I was doing weddings and like all the other things. So the food hub was just it was like a sweet, it was just a bonus, right? So I think that just like a little bit perspective wise that's one of the challenges that I think the food hub in Homer faced, was that we have so many markets, we have so much interest from local consumers to buy locally grown products, that our individual farmers are seeing that success in a lot of different places. So it's hard to get enough sales through that one channel to either pay the bills or break into those institutional markets.
I can't shut my mouth. I had one more, I saw one other comment in the chat around, did it close because the farmer's market was cheaper? Just a comment to that. Our model with the Alaska Food Hub has always been to let the producers control their pricing, for better or for worse. Some chose to absorb our markup fee. Some decided to just list what they would sell it for at the farmer's market. So, or direct to a restaurant or something like that. Some did wholesale pricing, some did not. So, Jeanette, yep, sometimes things were more expensive, sometimes things weren't.
Well, we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to put the last slide that had all the panelists' contact info back up on the screen. But I wanted to thank everybody for participating. And Kaylee, did you want to say something too? No. Elliot, can I put you on the spot to like wrap us up with a hopeful food hub message while I pull up that slide?
All right, everybody, we're gonna gather your hands. We're gonna stand around circle. Oh, no, I mean, yeah, there's no point in sugarcoating. This shit is tough. It's really hard to do this. It's extremely difficult. But honestly, like, there's a point at which there's a choice that's the root of it. And it's not about margins. It's not about logistics. It's about belonging, and it's about building resilience or connection to Mother Earth and each other. So food hubs might be the pathway, but that's the destination. Yeah. Rah, rah, rah.